For 5 years, one of America's most celebrated filmmakers has been working on a 9-hour documentary about one of the greatest and most influential artists in pop history. According to the few who have seen it, it is a cinematic masterpiece. So, how is it possible that nobody's going to be able to see it? The film is called The Book of Prince and was directed by Ezra Edelman, who is best known for his Academy Award-winning documentary, O.J. Made in America. There have been plenty of documentaries made about Prince, such as Sign of the Times, which was directed by Prince himself. Most of them focus primarily on concerts, his music, his pure genius, which is totally legit, but essentially, these have been fan films. He had a huge impact on my musical career. I don't know where my Purple Rain album is. I just can't find it. I was just starting to record my own music in my home studio when I found out that he was producing his own albums and playing all of the instruments on them. I even camped out overnight for tickets for his Purple Rain tour when it came through Atlanta, and that was just an incredible show. Prince was an amazing singer. He was pushing boundaries, recategorizing music. He had this way of embodying sensuality and sexuality in kind of an uncategorizable way. I mean, look at this. I remember getting this album and looking at this and going, ooh! He was also a mystery. In fact, he cultivated that mystery. He was elusive. But we've known that for a long time. And that's where Ezra Edelman comes in. He is an acclaimed filmmaker known for his rigorous research and adherence to facts. He was approached by Netflix in 2019, who had made a deal with Prince's estate that gave them exclusive access to Prince's famous vault. The vault was Prince's personal archive, which was at his home studio, Paisley Park, where he lived, practiced, recorded, filmed videos, movies, and performed concerts for 30 years. The vault contains unreleased albums, hundreds of hours of live footage, music videos, original demos. I mean, who knows what? Now, Netflix reportedly paid tens of millions of dollars for this, and they gave Edelman and Netflix editorial control of the film. Now, how could anybody resist a gig like that? I mean, the vault? So Edelman takes the gig and starts going through the vault. He finds unseen footage, hours of him just playing music, unfinished films, I mean, all sorts of things that are cool, but pretty much all of it is just performance. What they don't find is anything candid or personal, like Prince hanging out with friends and just talking, and there's nothing really about his creative process, writing, or recording. The few bits of footage that they find that are personal appear to be scratched, almost like it had been done intentionally. And it seems like the vault didn't actually have everything, just what Prince wanted to be found. But Edelman, being the kind of documentary maker that he is, he wanted to get to the facts. He wanted to know the real story. So he starts to interview people that knew Prince well. What was his childhood like? What drove him? What things did he care about? But people were very reluctant to speak candidly about Prince. They're being very protective. It's not something people like to do, and besides, a lot of them had built their careers and their reputations because of their connection with Prince, and they didn't want to mess that up. But eventually, people did start to talk. And after he had interviewed over 75 people, he started to get a clear picture of who Prince was, and put together with the material he had found in the vault, he was able to tell Prince's story, which wasn't some sort of big secret, but it is about the complex and troubled person that he was alongside the pure genius of his music. So, after years of research, interviews, filming, editing, Edelman has a pretty solid cut of the film, and he shows it to a small group of people as well as Prince's estate. Now, I haven't seen the film myself, but I've watched and read multiple interviews, including those with Edelman himself. So I'm referencing their thoughts and reactions and opinions. I'll leave links to all of those in the description below, but it seems like the common opinion amongst people that have seen the film is that it is an absolute masterpiece, and that one of the things it does very well is tell the story of Prince's childhood. According to testimonies in the film, he had a troubled relationship with his parents. There was violence in their home, and his parents split up when he was a kid. First, he lived with his mother, and then she got remarried. Two of the people in the film say that Prince told them that when he was a kid, his stepfather shut him in a room for 6 weeks, sliding food under the door, and that when he finally came out, he had changed into a completely different person. And then, when he was 12, his mother kicked him out and sent him to live with his father, who was a musician and a very religious, authoritarian parent. After he found Prince in a room with a girl a couple times, he kicked Prince out. Prince was 14 years old at the time. After that, he lived with friends and for years slept on a mattress in his best friend's basement, Andre Simone. He was an abandoned person. According to people who knew him, this was a major theme in his life and probably had a lot to do with his own unstable relationships. He was distrustful and demanding. A lifelong pattern that is seen in this film is that Prince would assemble families around himself in the form of band members and collaborators, but he was constantly pushing those relationships to the breaking point. A couple of collaborators said that when they asked him for a raise, he said, "If you love me, you wouldn't ask for a raise," which is actually not that unusual of a thing for a superstar to say to somebody that they're working with. Just saying. But what I get from all this is that Prince was at odds with himself. On the one hand, he had creativity just pouring out of him and a desire to include people in that. Yet, he was constantly pushing people away. And he was very controlling of his girlfriends, yet he was a huge supporter of women in music. He mostly employed female recording engineers and had a lot of famous female collaborators, many whose careers he helped build. I've read a bunch of articles from women who did recording sessions with Prince, and they just sound amazing and inspiring, but they would also say that sometimes he would put them down and make them feel worthless. One of his girlfriends and collaborators, Jill Jones, talks about an incident where he flew into a jealous rage and hit her, never apologizing. Now hearing this, it makes me think that maybe his experiences in his childhood manifested itself not only in the way that he dealt with people, but in the music as well. There's this one song called The Beautiful Ones. It's from Purple Rain, and you may have heard it, and they show it in the movie. And he's singing, "Do you want him or do you want me? I gotta know. I gotta know." And when you hear it, and I remember seeing it in the movie, like he's screaming and he's writhing and he's just making all these sounds. And I always thought of it as like some sort of sensual thing, but I went back and listened to it last night, and now looking at it and knowing this, it's like, it doesn't sound as sexual to me as it does like painful and full of grief and very intense. And by the way, in my opinion, I think that is one of Prince's best songs ever. So why is it that we're never going to get to see this masterpiece? Well, in the original agreement that Netflix made with Prince's estate, the estate would be able to review the film for factual accuracy, which Edelman agreed with. I mean, that's what he does. He's a journalist. But during the years that he was working on the film, there were these complicated legal battles over who controlled the estate. It had been controlled by a bank and courts in Minnesota, but it ended up switching over to a lawyer that had worked with Prince back in the 90s, his family, and a music company. And after the new people that were in charge of the estate saw the film, they were a little upset, and they submitted a 17-page document with objections, things they wanted to have removed, but none of that actually had anything to do with any actual facts. It was just that they didn't want people talking about the things that people had not been talking about before. Edelman made a couple of changes just to kind of appease them, but he wasn't going to take out stuff that was maybe a little sad or portrayed Prince in a bad light, because it's all part of the story. Well, this goes on for months, and then the estate wants to shorten the film, which it's like, God, it's a 9-hour film. They wanted him to take out 3 hours. I mean, anybody who's worked on a film and done it for that long and put together an early cut to take out a whole third of a film, not to mention, is even 9 hours long enough to tell a man's life story. So the whole project is at a stalemate, and then Netflix comes out with this official statement. The Prince estate and Netflix have come to a mutual agreement that will allow the estate to develop and produce a new documentary featuring exclusive content from Prince's archive. As a result, the Netflix documentary will not be released. Basically, Edelman is out, the film is dead, and any future film will be done by the estate. Edelman is devastated. His position is that he was doing his journalistic job, but the estate wants this sanitized version. A lawyer for the estate told Edelman that they were afraid that the film would cause generational harm to Prince and that it would hurt their bottom line, which is making money. Edelman feels like this is absurd. This is what he said. "I do believe the irony is this film would be great for Prince, and I think it would serve the estate and its bottom line tremendously. What do you see when you visit Paisley Park? Oh, this is where a guy lived. But what you see is a museum that's full of rooms that are named after albums. There are rooms that are full of issues. There are rooms that are full of his outfits. But there's really no mention of sex. There's really no mention of religion. There's a glossy thing that's being promoted for monetary gain. This image that we continuously need to traffic in of this person who wore glitzy outfits and glitzy shoes and made all this work, all of which is true. But it's so much deeper. His struggles between good and evil in himself, the struggle that you see in the music and the art, and then how it played out in his life. And it's like, how can you not want to tell this story? I think what he's saying is that this would actually deepen our relationship with Prince and revive his stature in our culture. You see, a lot of young people, they just think about Prince as that guy in Purple Rain. They don't know anything about his other records, the struggles he went through with the record companies, the work he did for other people, and that he was one of the greatest guitar players of all time. Now, this whole movie is not just about him being a jerk and controlling and all that weird kind of stuff. It's just part of the film, but it is the stuff that I think probably killed the film. Edelman said this about the film: "I believe that people can handle the truth and an honest portrayal of a brilliant artist and at times a flawed human. This guy got kicked out of his house when he was a teenager. He lived in the basement of his best friend. He created himself from whole cloth. His will, his drive as a person, as an artist, the struggle he went through, that he happened to also be a genius is unparalleled. That's also what this movie is about. Why can't we hold two truths together? It's not that hard. These things go together. His genius, by the way, would not have wrought Prince, would not have created Prince, genius alone. No, genius plus drive plus trauma. Those are the things that created Prince. Why can't we handle that? Why can't the world handle that? I don't understand it. And neither do I." Prince, towards the end of his life, was starting to open up, and the last hours of the film are about this. His last tour was just him and a piano, no glitz. And in fact, the very last show he ever did was here in Atlanta, Georgia. And he was starting to write his autobiography. I wonder what would have been in that. After news of the film being killed came out, Jill Jones, who spoke earlier in the film about her relationship with Prince, including the incident where he hit her, said this about the film being shut down: "Prince was a man who lived under the weight of expectation, both his own and those of the world that adored him. He built a persona so larger than life that it became a prison, a gilded cage, one he could never fully step out of. Prince's alleged struggle with drug addiction was deeply intertwined with his relentless pursuit of perfection, an impossible standard he imposed on himself to satisfy a fan base that craved his mystique, his eccentricity, and his ever-evolving artistry. At his core, he was a consummate people pleaser, trapped in expectation to remain an enigma, always surprising, always beyond reach. The tragedy lies in the fact that so many refused to acknowledge the truth of who he really was. He understood this better than anyone. He knew that revealing his true self, stripped of the carefully crafted persona, would lead to rejection. And, in a way, he was right. The recent choices made by Netflix and his estate only reinforce this truth. The world is unwilling to accept Prince as a man, only as a myth. Without the elaborate stagecraft, without the veil of mystery, his raw humanity is deemed insufficient. His struggles, his journey, his sacrifices, all of the elements that shaped him will remain obscured. Instead, the world will most likely receive a sanitized, polished version of Prince, a carefully curated illusion that erases the depth of his reality." So, where is this film? Is it on a hard drive somewhere? Will we ever be able to see it? When asked this question, Edelman said this: "I think the film exists. I assume it exists on Netflix somewhere. I would go back and change the last shot of the film. There's this motif in the film. Prince made a few documentaries or shot a bunch of stuff, and so each time he decided, based on where he was in life, that they weren't going to actually be seen. So they went back in the vault. The point is, everything goes back in the vault. You try to make a film, that goes back in the vault. So I would now, if I could change the film, the last shot would be this whole thing going back in the vault, and the vault door would close. And that's a wrap." Making this video has been kind of emotional for me. I actually stopped filming to see if I could go find my Purple Rain album, which I can't find anywhere, which is kind of depressing. But I have been reading this. This documents the Purple Rain era studio sessions. It's really, really cool. I'll put a link to this in the description. Anyway, I'd like to know what everybody thinks. Leave a comment. Thanks for watching. And always, be unique.